Boo doo 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 doo. Boo doo 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 doo. Boo doo 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 doo. Boo doo 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 doo. My friend the communist holds meetings in his RV. I can't afford his gas, so I'm stuck here watching TV. I don't have digital. I don't have diddly squat. It's not having what you want. It's wanting what you've got. I'm gonna soak up the sun. Gonna tell everyone to lighten up. I'm gonna tell them that I've got no one to blame. For every time I feel lame, I'm looking up. I'm gonna soak up the sun. I'm gonna soak up the sun. Hi, it's 1913 and there's a vaudeville performer named Pinto Colvig. Now his main skit consists of him playing the clarinet poorly and then sort of miming to those off-key notes. Growing up he got the nickname Pinto the Village Clown, which is what he took as his vaudeville stage name. Pinto worked the Pantage theater circuit before becoming a clarinetist for the Algie Barn Circus for about a season. A year later, he became a cartoonist in Reno, Nevada, before moving on to Carson City and then circling all the way back to the Algie Barnes Theater for another season. By 1916, he was working at the Animated Film Corporation in San Francisco with Brighton 4 and Tack Knight. Benjamin Thaxton Knight. The AFC were a cartoon production company long before Disney was even stepping foot in Laugh-O-Grams. They were one of the first animation studios on the West Coast, period. That same year, 1916, the AFC decided to work on the first feature-length motion picture. This is before color and it was before sound. The final film was going to be called Creation, and it was going to be a combination of silhouette cutout and traditionally drawn animation. The whole film was going to be directed by the village clown himself. Now, something happened to the original copy of it. Now, we're not 100% sure what it was, but if I had to take a wild guess, I would say fire. Only 4 to 5 frames still remain today. If it were all still together, this would be the first feature-length animated motion picture ever. And that's what we're looking for today. The first feature-length animated movie. We're going to start in 1913 and then work our way chronologically through all of the attempts at a feature-length movie before finally arriving there and then going through a little bit more of the process of how the movie was pushed through production. Now, I have a couple of conditions that qualify a movie to be a feature-length motion picture. First of all, there needs to be sound. Once we have the technology to do sound on film, there's no reason for it to be silent anymore, and spoilers, it is going to go past 1927, so there needs to be sound. Secondly, there needs to be no live action components and no stop motion. That includes those stop motion silhouette things that Pinto was doing earlier. Now, the race for the first animated movie actually takes place all around the world. That means you get to see me try to pronounce things that I can't pronounce. So with the qualifiers established, who's first? And it looks like Argentina has joined the chat. What have you got for us today, Argentina? Ooh, that's on fire. El Apostle, or just The Apostle, is a film by Quinario Cristiani. It follows the Argentinian president, Hipólito Yrigoyen, I'm not sorry, as he dresses as an apostle and then ascends to Mount Olympus. There, he has a conversation with Zeus where he basically just complains about the people in the port cities who he's just not very popular with. This is kind of wild to me. In a world of Mickey Mouse, Betty Boop, and Porky Pig, Christiani creates an animation where the real-life president ascends to the gods of another country that neither he nor the director are from, and asks them for help. It's all of the reviews that I read about it are giving very different conflicting opinions on what the movie is actually saying. In the film, Jorgen gets Zeus's lightning bolt. He then returns to those port cities and cleanses Buenos Aires of all immorality and corruption, burning it to the ground. This is a city that he is president of, and it's seen as a good thing that he burns it to the ground. I know it's propaganda, but I don't know what it's propaganda for. Is it pro-Jurgen or anti-Jurgen? You have some people saying, oh, he got rid of all the immorality and corruption, and all the pro-Jurgen people are saying, good for you. And then you have the anti-Jurgen people saying, he's claiming to get rid of the immorality and corruption, but actually all he's doing is burning the city down. One thing all the sources agree on is that the actual technical aspect of the animation was very well done. In particular, the burning of Buenos Aires. Apparently they just drew really realistic fire back in 1916. The film played several times a day for 6 months before Buenos Aires caught wind that this movie ends with their town being burnt down, and the town council had it banned. Now, since the film never actually played anywhere outside of Buenos Aires and then was eventually banned, it kind of flew under the radar for a lot of historians until about the time the internet rolled around. Now, personally, I'm an effects artist, so I'm really excited to see how 1916 effects wowed their audience. This should be really interesting to break down. Let's take a look. That's a real fire. It is 1926, and Vale Film Studio is just burnt to the ground. Now, Vale Film Studio was where Christiani housed all of his equipment and the only copy of the film. So that officially makes this just a lost film. Nobody can ever actually see what these reviews saw. Ever, which is an absolute shame. If there was, we're going to talk about a couple of lost films in this video, and out of all of them, this is the one that I wanted to see the most. You have some people saying that it praises the president for what a good job he's doing, and others saying that it shows him as a tyrannical dictator, and all of them are saying that the effects were great. I would have loved to see this, and it's a shame that it was lost. So, thank you for your attempt, Argentina. But yeah, no, this one doesn't count. Let's see who's next. Oh, you have a different one. Is this one going to be on fire? You promise? Alright, let's take a look. Okay, so this Christiani guy is becoming a little bit of a recurring character, so we should probably establish who he is. Originally born in Santa Giulia, Italy, Christiani's family immigrated to Buenos Aires when he was just 4 years old. He grew up in a very left-leaning part of the country, and throughout his entire lifetime the country was run by right-leaning politicians that he was constantly at odds with. This makes me think that the Apostle was anti-Jurgen propaganda, but I can't know for sure because I haven't seen it myself. The Buenos Aires City Council are the ones that ended up actually banning it, so it's kind of hard to tell for sure. Regardless, throughout his career, he ended up making a number of shorts that all featured very heavy political overtones in some way, shape, and or form. Basically making 20-minute political comics. Which leads us right into San Dejar Rastros. Created a year after El Apostle, Sin Dejar Rastros is another film created by Quinario Christiani, this one using cutout animation. The plot revolved around a man named Baron von Luxemburg as he sank an Argentinian ship in an attempt to get Argentina to join World War I on the side of the Germans. Now, there's a lot of similarities between this film and Winsor McCay's The Sinking of the Lusitania. Both films are about a nautical disaster brought on by Germany's unrestricted submarine warfare policy. Now, President Jurgen was trying to stay neutral in World War I, so this film just enraged him. So what he did was, oh, hi, Argentinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, what are you doing here? Oh yeah, that makes sense. That was your only copy, wasn't it, Argentina? Now seems like an appropriate time to point out the fact that this film translates to without a trace. I tried to look up the specific disaster that the film was based on, but it proved to be a lot more difficult than finding something like the sinking of the Lusitania. Which makes sense when you think about it. Every newspaper in America wrote about the sinking of the Lusitania, but if a similar disaster happened in Argentina, President Urigan would probably just halt the presses the same way he confiscated this movie.
Stop the presses! Okay, start the presses!
That takes 4 hours.
Whatever, I'll be at Moe's.
The end result is that the sources are just very, very scarce. That said, I did find this article that chronicles the battles of German U-boat U-117. According to history.navy.mil, on August 17, 1918, U-117 encountered a 2,846-ton steel-hulled Norwegian cargo carrier called the Nordhav. The Nordhav was traveling through the Atlantic, carrying a massive shipment of linseed from Buenos Aires to New York. Now, I know nothing about guns or how they're made, but for what it's worth, according to a bunch of military forums, linseed oil is used to finish rifle stock, meaning it can be used directly in gun manufacturing. I am, however, an oil painter, and I also know it can be used for commercial use, just spreading oil around in your paint. So this isn't necessarily a military shipment, but it could be. And for that reason, the sailors of U-117 boarded the Nordhav with explosives and sank the shipment off the coast of Argentina. No deaths were reported in this article, at least in relation to this instance, but this should be proof that, if nothing else, German U-boats were a problem off their coast, which means that the movie was based in at least some truth. After playing for just one day, Sin de Rastros was confiscated by the Argentinian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and nobody's ever seen it since. For all intents and purposes, a copy of it might still exist in their basement, but I'm not there, and I'm not Argentinian, so, yeah, we're just gonna chalk this one up to being a lost film as well. Let's jump up to 1924. Carlos Espiajo and Carlos F. Borosque create an animated feature-length film called The Life and Miracles of Jiggs. Now bear with me on this because I want to try to pronounce all of the animations in their original dialect, but I can barely speak English words properly. So, here goes nothing. Villa y Milagros de Don Fausto. This is one of the hardest films to research just because there's not that much information on it. I see a lot of articles mention it, so I know that the film exists. It has a lot of positive reviews from the time it was released, and there is a wiki on it, but past that, it's not really clear what this movie was. We know that it would probably use traditional and cutout animation, and beyond that, it came from Chile? That's about it. I thought maybe I could find more information on it by researching the two directors whose names I could barely pronounce. Borosque made 2 silent movies and then this film before moving to Hollywood in 1926. I couldn't find any specific information relating him to Jiggs, though. Carlos Espiajo, on the other hand, is an Argentinian swimmer who competed in the 1948 Summer Olympics. According to his links on Wikipedia, he was born in August of 1923, which would make him just 1 month old when he directed this entire film, which is a very impressive feat. I'm surprised it didn't mention that. For real though, I couldn't actually find any real information on this movie, just that it was a comedy and apparently the reviews liked it. Beyond that, if I can't see it, it doesn't count, so sorry, Chile. Every movie we've talked about so far has been lost to time, so let's see what Germany has to offer. Released in 1926 by someone named Lot Reiner, The Adventures of Prince Ahmed is a silhouette cutout film. Now what that means is it's more or less paper dolls. It's stop motion animation. It's more akin to sock puppets than traditional animation, which honestly kind of looks like a James Bond intro. I'm kind of into it. I wouldn't count it as the first fully animated movie because it doesn't really implement traditional animation in the way that we're looking for, but it is worth mentioning, and it does look strikingly good from time to time. The story is based on 1001 Nights by Hannah Diab. Prince Ahmed's father makes a deal with a sorcerer which causes him to be carried off by a bunch of flying horses. As you do. Now Ahmed has to make his way back to his homeland so that way he can team up with the Caliph and save his niece from the sorcerer. Now this really is the oldest animation, and if you're looking for just pure what was the first feature-length animation, this one's 65 minutes and it is animation. So you could end the video here. But like I mentioned earlier, we're going to be looking for more traditional animation. I set a bunch of arbitrary rules so that way this video can be longer. You're welcome. Another one of those arbitrary lines that I mentioned was the fact that I want sound in the video, and this one had German intertitle cutaways. I'm looking for sound. I want to hear this movie. It's not the same. I want to see depth. I want to see all of the things that we've talked about being used in one video, and this one, some of those things just haven't been invented yet. It's 26, it's too early. So for that reason, we're going to keep moving on past Prince Ahmed, but I did want to point out that this was an absolute milestone for animated movies. I mean, it looks really good, actually. Alright, let's see who's next. Oh, welcome back, Argentina. You got something new for us? Promise you're not going to lose it? Alright, let's give it a shot. Palutopolius is an animation that came out in 1931. It's a combination of traditional animation and that stop-motion silhouette thing that we were talking about earlier. This one uses sound on disc, and it was also made by Quinario Cristiani, making this the third animation that he's made for this video. Using Vitaphone sound on disc technology, this is the first animation to be shot with sound. Again, this film centers around the Argentinian president Hipólito Yrigoyen, who by this point had gotten the nickname Peludo, which means armadillo. This time, however, he's a pirate. He's a captain of the ship the Pulidopius, which translates to Armadillo City. The pirates are sailing to the land of Quazolandia and are constantly being hounded by sharks. You see, Yrigoyen had stolen his ship, the Pulidopius, from its former owner, Palaudo, which translates to the Bald, with the ship eventually being recovered by Argentinian military forces. Okay, so we've established that any film directed by Cristiani is going to involve the Argentinian politics of the early 1900s. So let's dive into that a little bit to make some sense of what's going on in this pirate story. The hungry sharks that kept attacking the ship represent the dissident radicals, the far ends of the political spectrum, who both Yrigoyen and Cristiani hated for different reasons. In 1930, a year into the film's production, President Yrigoyen was overthrown in a military coup by General Jose Felix Urariburu. After the coup, Yrigoyen's character was demoted in importance to the story, and a number of the shark scenes were just dropped entirely. He also added General Uribaru as the hero of the film, someone who defeated the tyrannical pirate captain. Cristiani also took this opportunity to add a moral center to the movie, a everyman kind of character named Juan Pulabello. After the delay, on September 16, 1931, the movie is finally released to general audiences. It's getting glowing reviews, surprisingly, for a movie that has had this many rewrites. I'm really excited to see some of Cristiani's work. I really, really want to, and what the hell, it's on fire again. Okay, so we're good. Okay, we're good. 1957, a fire did burn down most of the copies, but luckily they had backups in a totally separate production building, so we're saying, are you serious right now? In 1957 and in 1961, two separate fires, 5 years apart from each other, burned down a now retired Cristiani's entire legacy. All materials for the film, every printed reel, every wax soundtrack, everything was eradicated in two separate fires. I'm doing this for fun, and I am having fun. It was a little disappointing to hear about that, though. After going in through all of the research to have it all just end in a fire and have just tiny scraps and morsels to go on of what this was and what it could have been. This is an entire trilogy that the world will never see. And if it hurts to know that nobody's ever going to see it, I share that pain. That sucks. That really does. Okay, it's getting a little toasty over here in South America, so let's head on over to the Soviet Union and see what they're up to. Okay, I just wanted to share this really quickly. I went to karaoke in between filming this section and the last one, wearing this shirt, and a bunch of people started calling me Little German Boy. That's hilarious, and just wanted to say hi. That was an awesome night. Thank you guys. Cheers. In 1937, a film directed by Alexander Petrushko was released by Mosh Films. Alright, let's do a little look up. Do a little looky-loo. Myori Gladiev, or New Gulliver, which is what I'm going to be calling it, was released to general audiences in the Soviet Union. Now, by this point, the Soviets have their own animation studios that are trying to compete with the animation studios over in Hollywood. I'm definitely going to cover that more in a separate video, but today I just want to focus on New Gulliver. New Gulliver was a combination of stop motion and live action. It clocked in at about 75 minutes, which is almost an entire reel of film, which is very rare even for live action, let alone something as painstaking as stop motion. The story revolved around a communist retelling of the 1726 Jonathan Swift novel, Gulliver's Travels. The film follows Gulliver after he lands in Lilliput and suffers under capitalist inequality and exploitation. Petrushko also received special commendation at the International Cinema Festival in Milan because the movie was just that much of a smashing success. The film featured 3,000 different puppets, each with a detachable head, so that he could have a wide range of emotions that the puppets went through. They even constructed a full-sized puppet boy for just one scene. Now, I can't tell if the movie was released with sound or not. A lot of movies were dubbed with sound after the fact, so I'm not 100% sure. There is a sound technician credit, but without more information, that's actually not a lot to go on. This movie may have been the first stop-motion animation, but we're looking for the first traditionally hand-drawn animation. So we're going to keep moving on now. So now we've moved on to 1937, and France and Germany are fighting each other. That's odd. You're not supposed to do that for another 2 years. Oh, they both want credit for this film. The Tale of the Fox was finished in 1930 in France, but they had dubbing issues, so they never actually premiered it there. Eventually, they got around to a premiere in Berlin, so when they went around to redub it, they redubbed it in German. Turns out the director of this film is Ladislav Starvich, who took a break from murdering insects over in Russia to come make this film over in France. So that means, at least from Ladis's perspective, this is a Russian film. So who gets the credit for this? It was produced in France, it was made with a Russian director, and it premiered in Germany. All three of them can technically claim that this is their movie. Okay, so I think I played into the whole which country gets credit a little too much. It was originally dubbed in German, so a couple of articles thought that it was a German film, but it was produced in France by French directors in a French production company, and it's about a French folktale. Ladislav Starvich was the main director, but there were other people that worked on it, and most of those people were French. So this is a French film. It was also France's and Starvich's first feature-length animated film. Produced in stop motion, it follows the fox Renaud as he sort of just plays pranks all around the kingdom. It was eventually redubbed in French in 1941, but it was also stop-motion puppet animation, so it also doesn't qualify for the first animation, at least for the purposes of this video. So, the search continues. Alright, it's May of 1937, and Disney has duct-taped together 5 of their silly symphonies, and they're now trying to pass it off as its own movie. I'm not going to let that fly, but we are going to talk about it for a minute. With a runtime of 41 minutes, the Academy Award review of Walt Disney cartoons is comprised of the following shorts: Flowers and Trees, 3 Little Pigs, The Tortoise and the Hare, 3 Little Kittens, and The Country Cousin. Cut in between each short was a title card and then a small narration sort of introing the next silly symphony. Now, there were 2 main reasons for this. First of all, Disney liked that Flowers and Trees won an Academy Award, and he wanted to showcase all of what he felt was his best symphonies. The second reason was to promote a movie that they were currently working on that would come out later the same year. Wink, wink. Now, this is traditional animation, but it's also just a compilation of shorts that came out before. I'm not counting this as the first movie, but like I mentioned, it's worth talking about. Oh look, Germany's back, and they got a haircut. Created by the Dial brothers during the height of pre-war Nazi Germany, The Seven Ravens was the first German feature-length animated motion picture. It used stop motion and retold a German fairy tale. Now, the film was released in Nazi Germany, which is a massive black mark on the film's history. But from my research, I haven't found anything that says that there's any specifically Nazi imagery involved in the film, or that there was even a Nazi motive behind it at all. For what it's worth, it was well into production by the time the Nazis rose to power, so I don't really think it was necessarily pro-Nazi. I think it was just not anti-Nazi, which is not much better when you think of it that way. So ordinarily now is when I would do the plot synopsis, but this one's a weird one. I read the Brothers Grimm fairy tale that it's based on, thinking that it might follow the story more or less, and well, I'm just going to give you the synopsis for both of them. So, this one is the Brothers Grimm fairy tale that it's based on. A peasant has 7 sons and no daughters. When the daughter is finally born, she's weak and sickly. So, the father sends all 7 sons to the well to get water so that she can be baptized in case she croaks. The sons screw up royally and drop the water down the well. Not sure why they couldn't just get more water from the same well, but this is the story. The father thinks that the sons are just messing around, so he becomes furious with them. He curses all 7 of his sons, and they all turn into ravens and fly away. The sister miraculously survives not having water for 20 minutes, and then grows up to go look for her older brothers. First she tries talking to the sun, and shockingly, it's too hot for her to get a word in edgewise, so it can't help her. Then she tries talking to the moon, and even more shockingly, it craves human flesh. So it can help her, but it won't. Then she tries talking to the morning star, which, either more or less shockingly, I've lost track at this point, gives her a chicken bone, which she says is going to be used to save her brothers' lives. She then travels to the glass mountain, where she immediately loses the chicken bone and has to cut off her own finger and use that as the key instead. So with the door properly unlocked, why didn't she just go, have a chicken wing? I'm not going to tell you to go to Buffalo Wild Wings, because that place sucks, but anywhere that you can get chicken wings, really. She travels into the mountain, and the dwarf, there's a dwarf there, tells her that the brothers will be back soon. Very vague instructions, but instructions nonetheless. So she goes to their dining room, eats some of their food, has some of their drink, which apparently is just pre-set for them, and then she takes a ring from home, which was never established in the first act, and leaves it in their cup. She hides just before the ravens re-enter. They come back and see that somebody ate their food and drank their wine. The youngest one finds the ring that the sister left and says out loud, "Gee, I hope it was my sister." The sister emerges, they embrace, and they all go home.
It's about family, and that's what's so powerful about it.
That's all, folks.
Couple of problems here. First of all, the translation that I read never actually specified that the curse was lifted, which implies that they're all living as ravens now with the father who cursed them for something that they didn't do. Secondly, it kind of implies that the ravens just get food every single day in that glass mountain of theirs. Why? On God's green earth, would you leave the glass mountain to go live as a feudal peasant in Germany? Why? Would you not just bring the sister and the father up to the mountain where food is provided for you? I hate this story. I am irrationally angry at this story. So the animation starts the same way. A father has 7 sons and then has an infant daughter. The infant daughter becomes sick, and the father sends the sons to the well. The sons then knock the water into the well and have no way to get more water. Isn't the bucket attached to a rope? Isn't that how you get, a well Also, I assume, like, there's more than one bucket around the well. I hate this. I'm irrationally angry at this story. I should not be this angry. I acknowledge that I should not be this angry. But it's so stupid. The sons mess up, they knock the water into the well, and the father curses them, and they turn into ravens and fly away. The infant daughter grows up, and then goes looking for the ravens. The daughter, who I believe has a name, but I legitimately do not know it, goes out into the woods to find them. Now, this is where the stories diverge. She spends a year in the woods knitting a sweater in the same tree. I guess just hoping that the ravens will fly by at some point. Honestly, not the worst plan. Instead of just walking around in circles hoping to find them, I guess if you just stay put, it's not a terrible plan. Either way, doesn't work. She's visited by an angel or a ghost or a demon or something, and it tells her to just go home. She's not finding them right now. Watching this again and editing, the thing that gets the daughter out of the forest is a king or a knight or something walks by and picks her up and takes her to a wedding. From there, the rest of the story is exactly the same, but the ghost or the angel or the demon or whatever, who might be the morning star, comes to her at the beginning of the trip, and I think she tells her that it's going to work, and then the king pulls her out before it can. So she does, and her going home turns a different baby into a raven as well. The town immediately assumes that she is a witch and threatens to burn her at the stake. So the angel or the demon or the ghost or whatever goes to the 7 ravens and brings them back as humans because apparently she could just do that all along. The boys and the baby all return just before they Joan of Arc her, and apparently that's enough to make them forget that she was considered being a witch at all, and they all live happily ever after. The end. It's also worth mentioning I do not have a translation of this movie. I had to watch it in German, and je ne parle German. So that's the 7 Ravens. I hate it. I think it's really stupid. The stop motion in it is very good. It's very well done, but it's not the first stop motion movie, and it's definitely not the one we're looking for. So we're going to keep looking. So next. Let's go back to America and check on Pinto Colvig from the beginning of the video. All Creation managed to make was fire. Pinto went on to make Pinto's Prismacolor comedy review in 1919, which would have been the first color comedy review to be produced in America if it had not also been lost in a fire. In 1922, Pinto started a newspaper cartoon panel called Life on the Radio Wave for the San Francisco Chronicle. The cartoon was a national hit, and it allowed Pinto to move his family from San Francisco over to Hollywood, where he began work as an animator, a title writer, and an actor in silent comedies. By the late 20s, he became friends with Walter Lantz, who was just starting his own studio at the time. Together, they created a character called Bolivar the Talking Ostrich, otherwise known as the worst animal. Not the character, I just hate ostriches. When Walter Lantz was hired at Universal in 1929 to take over the production of Oswald the Lucky Rabbit, he personally hired Colvig to be an animator, a storyman, and a voice actor, voicing Oswald himself in a couple of shorts.
Steady, Jackie, we'll find that Grovac Trekkie in Alaska, Raymond Eskimo.
In 1930, he signed an 8-year contract with Disney where he began working as a writer and a sound effect artist, making barks for Pluto the pup. He'd go on to voice the practical pig in the Three Little Pigs Silly Symphony before taking on his most iconic role, Goofy Goof. And by 1934, he was well embedded at Disney as they were working on something really big.
What is the most interesting thing you're doing in the studio now?
Well, at the present time, we're making a feature-length cartoon.
A feature-length cartoon?
Yes, the old fairy tale, Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Continued in part 2.